The day Amina returned to the village of Ijaro, the wind carried a strange heaviness, as if the land itself remembered what she had tried to forget. Dust swirled along the narrow road leading to her childhood home, clinging to her sandals, her dress, and the quiet confidence she had carefully built in the city. She had come back for one reason only. Her father was gone. The inheritance he left behind was about to tear what remained of a family apart. In the old compound stood a house built of worn clay bricks and faded memories, now guarded fiercely by her elder sister, Zainab, whose presence alone seemed to darken the doorway. Years ago, before distance and resentment reshaped them, they had once shared laughter under the mango tree, shared secrets whispered at night, shared dreams of leaving poverty behind together. But something had broken between them long before their father's death, something neither of them ever fully named. Zainab had stayed in the village, caring for their aging father in his final years, while Amina had left, determined to escape the suffocating cycle of hardship. That difference had grown into a wound neither time nor silence had healed. Now, as Amina stepped into the courtyard, villagers gathered at a distance, watching like shadows behind fences, already sensing that something unresolved had returned home with her. Zainab stood near the veranda, arms folded, her eyes sharp and unwelcoming. There was no embrace, no tears, only a cold recognition that felt heavier than rejection. You came late, Zainab said quietly, her voice carrying years of buried bitterness. She looked at the house, at the cracked walls, at the familiar bench where her father used to sit. I came as soon as I heard, she finally replied, though even she could hear how hollow it sounded. The air between them tightened. Everyone in the village knew the rumor already. The inheritance their father left was not large in wealth, but in land it was significant enough to change a life, enough to shift power in a place where land meant survival. But what made it dangerous was not the value itself, the document that decided who it belonged to. Zainab claimed she had been given everything verbally before their father died. Amina believed there was a written will hidden somewhere, one their father never had the chance to reveal properly. And between those two truths lay a silence filled with suspicion. That evening, as the sun bled into the horizon, the first meeting with the village elders was called under the old baobab tree. The elders sat in a circle, their faces lined with age and authority, their voices low but firm. Zainab spoke first, her tone controlled but firm, insisting she had sacrificed her youth, her marriage prospects, even her health to care for their father. Where was Amina when he could not walk? She asked, her gaze cutting through the crowd. Where was she when medicine was needed, when food was scarce? Murmurs rose among the villagers. Amina felt them pressing against her, like invisible hands. When it was her turn, she rose slowly. Her voice was softer but steady. I did not abandon him, she said. I left because there was nothing left for me here. I sent money when I could. I wrote letters he never replied to. I thought he understood. But understanding was not what the crowd was looking for. They were looking for certainty, for someone to blame for a story that made sense of inheritance and resentment. And Zainab, with her calm grief and sharp words, seemed to offer them that clarity. As the meeting ended without resolution, Amina noticed something unsettling. One of the elders, Baba Rilwan, avoided her eyes when she asked about the will. Another elder whispered privately to Zainab before leaving, his hand briefly touching her shoulder in a way that suggested familiarity rather than judgment. That small gesture planted a seed of doubt in Amina's mind. That night, she sat inside the guest room she had been given, unable to sleep. The house creaked with old sounds, whispers of wind slipping through cracks in the walls. Outside, she could hear Zainab moving through the compound, her footsteps deliberate, purposeful. Amina thought about their father, about his quiet ways, about how he always insisted that truth must be written or it will be rewritten by those strongest enough to claim it. Had he left something behind that she never saw? Or had Zainab already shaped the truth long before Amina returned? The next morning, the tension deepened. Amina went to the small storage room where their father kept old belongings. Dust coated everything, and the smell of aged wood and dried herbs filled the air. She searched carefully, lifting cloth bundles, moving broken pottery, scanning every corner where a hidden document might be concealed. But what she found instead unsettled her more than emptiness. A section of the room had been recently disturbed. A wooden box, one she remembered clearly from childhood, was missing. When she asked Zainab about it, her sister did not hesitate. There was nothing important in it, she said sharply, but her eyes betrayed her for a fraction of a second, a flicker too quick to be innocent. That moment lingered longer than words. Later that day, Amina met Sadiq, a quiet man who had once been close to their father. He had the cautious demeanor of someone who had seen too much conflict in families and learned to survive by speaking little. When Amina asked him directly if her father had ever mentioned a written will, Sadiq hesitated. The pause was long enough to feel like a confession, without words. Your father feared what would happen after his death, he finally said. He feared division more than poverty. Then he looked away. But fear makes men hide things even from those they trust. Before Amina could press further, he walked away, leaving her with more questions than answers. That evening, she watched Zainab meet privately with the same elder from the Baobab meeting. They spoke near the edge of the compound where shadows gathered thickest. Zainab's hands moved as she spoke, not in anger, but in control, as though she was arranging pieces of something unseen. The elder nodded slowly, then handed her a folded paper. Amina's breath caught, but distance swallowed detail before she could confirm what she had seen. A strange realization began forming inside her. This was not just a dispute over inheritance. Something had already been decided in silence long before she returned, and she might be standing in the middle of a truth, carefully rewritten by the only person who knew exactly how to hurt her without raising her voice. Amina did not sleep that night. The folded image of paper in Zainab's hand replayed in her mind, like a wound refusing to close. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw it again. Zainab standing at the edge of the compound, the elder leaning in, the quiet exchange that felt less like conversation and more like confirmation of something already arranged. Outside, the village was silent, but silence in Ijaro was never empty. It carried listening ears, hidden judgments, and truths. People only spoke when they believed no one could use them against them. Amina rose before dawn, her resolve hardened by uncertainty. If the truth had been written, she would find it. If it had been buried, she would dig it out with her bare hands. The storage room still smelled of dust and old wood, but now it felt different, as if it had been disturbed not just physically, but intentionally erased. She ran her fingers along the walls, tapping, pressing, searching for hollow spaces. That was when she noticed it. Behind a stack of broken clay pots, a section of the wall had been recently repaired. The mud was newer, smoother, not matching the rest of the aged structure. Her pulse tightened. She pressed against it. It did not give way easily, but it was hollow behind the surface. Someone had sealed something inside. Amina's breath grew shallow as she searched for a tool, her hands trembling slightly despite her effort to stay calm. If there was any trace of her father's true intentions, it might be here hidden, deliberately, or hidden by force. But before she could continue, footsteps approached. She turned quickly. Zainab stood at the doorway. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The air between them felt dense, like a storm trapped in a narrow space. You're searching again, Zainab said finally, her voice calm but edged with warning. Amina steadied herself. If there is nothing to hide, why does it feel like everything is buried? A faint, humorless smile crossed Zainab's face. You always think things are buried. Maybe some things were simply never yours to find. The words struck deeper than intended. Amina stood up slowly, brushing dust from her hands. Did you take the wooden box? She asked directly. Zainab did not answer immediately. That silence was enough. You left, Zainab said instead. You chose distance over duty, and now you return when there is something to take. Amina's voice sharpened. I came because father is gone, because there is truth here that doesn't match what you're saying. Zainab stepped forward slightly, her eyes steady. Truth is not something you arrive late to and claim ownership of. The confrontation did not escalate into shouting. It did not need to. Every word was deliberate, controlled, cutting deeper because of what was not being said. Mina eventually stepped back, forcing herself to leave the room before emotion turned into action. But as she walked away, she noticed something else. Zainab did not follow her. Instead, she remained in the storage room, her gaze fixed on the same wall Amina had been inspecting. I, that alone confirmed what Amina already feared. Zainab knew exactly what was hidden there. Later that morning, Amina went to see Sadiq again. She found him near the riverbank, repairing a fishing net with slow, practiced movements. When she approached, he did not look surprised, only tired, as if he had expected her return sooner or later. You saw something, he said before she could speak. Amina paused. Zainab is hiding something, and the elders are involved. Sadiq sighed deeply, continuing his work without looking up. When families break over land, it is never just about land. He finally looked at her. Your father changed his will shortly before he died. Not once, twice. Amina froze. Twice? Sadiq nodded slowly. The first version favored Zainab. That much everyone knows. But after something happened between them, he changed it again. Amina's voice lowered. What happened between them? Sadiq hesitated. That hesitation felt heavier than any answer. That is where things become dangerous, he said quietly. Because not everyone agreed with the second version. A chill moved through Amina's chest. Who else saw it? Sadiq shook his head. Only those who stood to lose something from it. Before she could ask more, he stood and walked away, leaving her once again with fragments instead of truth. That evening, Amina followed Zainab from a distance. The village was alive with routine children, running between huts, women grinding grain, men gathering under shade trees. But beneath it all, Amina felt a different current, one of quiet anticipation. Zainab walked with purpose, not like someone wandering, but like someone following a known path. She eventually reached the elder's compound, slipping inside without hesitation. Amina stayed hidden behind a cluster of neem trees, her heart beating hard against her ribs. Through the open doorway, she saw them again. The same elder from before, Baba Rilwan and Zainab seated across from him. The elder placed something on the table between them. This time, Amina focused harder. It was a document, folded, old, but not ancient. Zainab's hand hovered over it, not rushing, not uncertain. Then she spoke, and though Amina could not hear the words clearly, she recognized the shape of control in her sister's posture. The elder nodded slowly. Then, to Amina's shock, he stamped the document, not as if approving a question, but confirming a decision already made. Amina's stomach tightened. She stepped back into the shadows, her mind racing. Whatever was inside that document, it was not being debated, it was being enforced. And she was not part of it. As she turned to leave unnoticed, her foot struck a dry branch. The sound cracked through the silence like a warning. Inside the compound, Zainab's head lifted sharply. For a moment, their eyes nearly met. Across distance and shadow, Amina did not wait. She ran. The night that followed felt heavier than the first, not with confusion now, but with clarity forming into something dangerous. Someone had rewritten her father's legacy, and worse, her sister was not just defending it, she was finalizing it. Amina did not return to the guest room that night. She stayed outside the village, hidden near the dry riverbed where reeds bent low under the weight of wind and silence. The air was colder there, untouched by the heat of argument and suspicion that now filled every corner of Ijaro. She replayed everything she had seen: the stamped document, Zainab's steady hand, the elder's compliance without hesitation. This was not confusion anymore, it was coordination. Something had been agreed upon, and she had only been invited back to witness its final sealing, not its formation. Around her, the night insects sang softly, indifferent to human betrayal. But Amina was no longer the same woman who had returned days ago, expecting only a dispute over inheritance. She now understood she had walked into something already in motion long before her arrival. At dawn, she made a decision. If truth had been hidden, she would find the place where it was first buried, not where it had been rewritten. That path led her back to her father's memory, not his house. She went to the oldest part of the village, where time itself seemed reluctant to move forward. There, beneath the shade of an ancient Eroko tree, lived Mama Kemi, a woman who had known her father longer than most people still alive. She was not an elder in title, but in presence, someone people visited when they no longer trusted the official version of anything. Akemi studied Amina in silence for a long moment before speaking. You have the eyes of someone chasing a truth that has already bitten her, she said calmly. Amina did not waste time with pleasantries. My father's will was changed twice, and now my sister and the elders are enforcing something I was never shown. Mama Kemi sighed, as though the weight of the story had already settled in her bones long before it reached her ears. Your father feared this, she said slowly. Not death, not poverty, but his own children after he was gone. Amina leaned forward. Did he tell you what he wrote? The old woman shook her head. He never showed me the final paper, but I saw him the night before he died. The words tightened the air. He came here, Mama Kemi continued, holding something in his hands. He said, if I leave this in the house, it will never survive the night I leave this world. Amina's voice dropped. Someone tried to take it. Mama Kemi's eyes hardened slightly. Someone did more than try. The silence that followed was heavier than anything said so far. Then she added, your sister was not always like this. Grief changes people, and so does fear when it becomes ambition. Amina felt a cold realization forming. You think she knows what was in it? Mama Kemi nodded faintly. I think she believes she is protecting what she was promised. That sentence lingered long after Amina left. Protection and theft had begun to look like the same thing in Ijaro. When Amina returned to the village, she did not hide anymore. She walked straight into the compound as Zainab was speaking with two men near the veranda. Their conversation stopped immediately when they saw her. The air shifted, tense and expectant. You followed me, Zainab said, not as a question, but as acknowledgement. Amina's voice was steady. You changed more than grief. You changed truth. The two men exchanged uneasy glances and stepped away, sensing the confrontation belonged only to the sisters. Zainab folded her arms. Truth is what survives paperwork, Amina, not memories, not emotions. Amina stepped closer. And what survives bribed elders? Zainab's expression tightened slightly, but she did not deny it. That silence confirmed everything. You think I stole from you, Zainab said finally. But I stayed when you left. I buried father with my own hands while you built a life far away. Amina's voice softened, but only slightly. And you think that gives you the right to rewrite what he intended? For the first time, something cracked behind Zainab's composure. Not anger, but exhaustion. He changed his will because he stopped trusting everyone, she said quietly. Including you. That sentence landed differently. Not as accusation, but as memory. Mina faltered for the first time. That's not true, she whispered. Zainab stepped forward now, voice lower. The final version was written the night before he died. I didn't force it. I only made sure no one else could destroy it after he was gone. A long silence stretched between them. The truth, or something shaped like it, hung in the air with no clear place to fall. Amina's mind raced through fragments. The sealed wall, the missing box, Sadiq's hesitation, the stamped document. None of it fully contradicted Zainab anymore. None of it fully exonerated her either. Then show me, Amina said finally. Show me the will. Zainab hesitated. For the first time, uncertainty crossed her face. Then she turned and walked inside the house. Amina followed. Inside the storage room, the repaired wall still stood untouched, but now Zainab went past it. She reached beneath a wooden shelf and pulled out the same box Amina had been searching for. It was not hidden in the wall. It had been moved after. Zainab placed it on the ground and opened it slowly. Inside was a document folded multiple times, worn at the edges. The final will. Amina knelt beside her. Zainab unfolded it without ceremony. There was no drama left in either of them now, only exhaustion and inevitability. As Amina read, her breath slowed. The inheritance was divided, but not equally in the way anyone had expected. The land was shared, but control of its sale and future decisions had been placed jointly between them. Neither could act alone. Not Zainab. Not Amina, the truth was not theft, it was constraint. Their father had not chosen one daughter over the other. He had chosen to bind them together in ownership so neither could undo what the other protected. A bitter silence filled the room. Zainab exhaled slowly. "He knew we would destroy each other otherwise," she said quietly. Amina closed her eyes. The anger she had carried began to dissolve, replaced not by relief, but by something heavier, understanding that came too late to feel clean. Outside, the village continued, as it always had, unaware of the resolution unfolding behind closed walls. But for the sisters, nothing would return to what it had been. Not forgiveness, not distance, only consequence. As Amina stood to leave, she paused at the doorway. "You didn't steal everything," she said softly. Zainab did not look at her. "And you didn't lose nothing. Between them, the inheritance remained. But so did the fracture. And some fractures, even when healed, never return to their original shape."